Sodom and Gomorrah. Two names whispered across the centuries. Two cities that rose from the ashes of Babel, glittering with power and beauty, only to vanish beneath a storm of fire. But what really happened there? Why did God look upon their streets, their altars, their celebrations, and decree an end so final that even the ground trembled? This is not just the story of ancient ruins. It is the story of human hearts when prosperity turns into pride, when freedom becomes indulgence, when the sacred is mocked and justice silenced. It is the story of how desire can masquerade as progress, and how a society intoxicated with itself can march toward destruction without ever noticing. What lessons wait for us in their fall? How can we recognize the same shadows when they creep into our own lives, our own nations, our own homes? Sodom and Gomorrah were more than cities. They are warnings etched in fire. Join us as we uncover the rise and the ruin of these legendary cities. We will walk their markets filled with gold and wine, hear the laughter that echoed in their plazas, and stand in the silence where towers once touched the sky. We will witness the angels who entered their gates, the desperate pleas of Abraham, and the fire that fell when heaven's patience was exhausted. This is not just their story, it is ours. For every one of us has wrestled with temptation, pride, and the illusion of invincibility. Stay with us until the end and discover why the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah still speaks today, why it can change the way we see our world and even our own hearts. If you find this story powerful and eye-opening, we invite you to like this video, subscribe to Bible Stories Untold TV, and share it with those who need to remember that ancient lessons are timeless. Let's begin.
Long ago, humanity built a tower to reach heaven. God struck it down, and the Tower of Babel fell. Their unity was broken, yet pride did not vanish. They crossed deserts where the sun burned and the cold pierced by night, searching for a land where life could begin again. At last, they came to the Jordan Valley, where the river wound like silver through fields of green. The air was sweet with fruit, and to wanderers, it felt as if paradise had returned. They settled beside the water. Tents gave way to stone, and soon towers marked the horizon. Children played by fountains, and merchants filled the markets with grain and spices. The valley became alive. In time, two cities rose. One stood on the plain, built for strength and trade. This was Sodom, a city of power. Its walls were thick, its gates heavy, and its markets thrived with goods that passed between Egypt and Mesopotamia. Merchants from faraway lands knew its plazas, where coins changed hands beneath banners of crimson and gold. The other spread across the hills, Gomorrah, a city of beauty and feasts. Its courtyards glowed with painted walls, and its gardens displayed rare trees and reflecting pools. Music echoed through the streets, and poets recited verses in gatherings. Its name became known as a haven for pleasure and art. Their progress was clear. The people learned to guide water into their fields and gather abundant harvests. Craftsmen shaped bronze into tools and ornaments. Builders marked roads across the valley, while poets and musicians filled the plazas with song. Yet on the hills, temples rose. Not to the Creator, but to idols made by their own hands. With abundance came pride, and with pride came leaders who promised more. The people trusted them, but their power turned justice into a weapon and freedom into excess. In Sodom, Bara ruled the courts. A widow once pleaded for her field, taken by a wealthy neighbor. Gold decided the verdict, and the woman left in tears. Merchants cheated the poor while guards looked away. The strong beat the weak, and justice was silenced in the streets. In Gomorrah, Beersa ruled with charm. He praised freedom, but it became indulgence without end. Nights drowned in wine and lust, and what was sacred turned into entertainment. Men pursued men, and women turned to women, abandoning the natural bond. The order of creation was cast aside, and the city celebrated it as progress. Prosperity without God had become their foundation, and a foundation without God cannot stand. But while Sodom and Gomorrah celebrated their corruption, far to the west, a man walked with God. Abraham lived beneath the oaks of Mamre, where his tents rose not far from Hebron. One hot afternoon he lifted his eyes and saw 3 men standing near. They looked like travelers, dust on their feet, yet a radiant presence marked them as more than men. These were messengers of the Lord. Abraham hurried to meet them, bowed to the ground, and begged them to rest in his shade. Water was brought to wash their feet, bread was baked, and a calf prepared. They sat beneath the tree while Abraham served them with honor. When the meal ended, the men rose and looked eastward. Beyond the hills lay the valley where Sodom and Gomorrah glittered in the sun. 2 turned their faces toward the plain and began their journey down the slope. One remained, and Abraham understood he was standing before the Lord.
The outcry from Sodom and Gomorrah is immense. Their sin is unbearable. I will send my messengers to see if the corruption is as complete as the cry that has reached my throne. If it is, judgment will fall.
Abraham looked east, where the valley lay beneath the haze of the afternoon sun. He thought of Lot, of his wife and daughters living within the walls of Sodom. And then he spoke. "Will you sweep away the righteous with the wicked?" His words were bold, yet his tone was heavy with fear. The Lord replied with patience, "If I find 50 righteous in the city of Sodom, I will spare the whole place for their sake." Abraham lowered his head. "What if the number is less than 50? Will you destroy the city for lack of 5?
If I find 45, I will not destroy it.
The dialogue pressed forward, each step narrowing the count. 40, 30, 20. With each answer, Abraham felt the mercy of God, but also the weight of Sodom's corruption. Finally, his voice nearly broke. "Let not the Lord be angry, and I will speak but once more. What if only 10 are found there?"
For the sake of 10, I will not destroy it.
Silence hung heavy. Abraham dared no further. The Lord departed, and Abraham remained alone beneath the oaks. And as Abraham stood in silence, the valley lay waiting. Its towers gleamed in the last light of the sun, unaware that judgment had already drawn near. And while Abraham remained beneath the oaks, the messengers of the Lord descended into the valley. The sun had set, and shadows stretched across the plain as the towers of Sodom glimmered against the fading light. At the gate, the 2 strangers arrived. The 2 who came to Sodom were angels clothed in human form, sent to test the city. They were met not with welcome, but with stares and mocking smiles. In Sodom, travelers were not honored, but prey. Lot saw them. He sat among the elders at the gate. Rising quickly, he bowed low and urged them to come under his roof.
"Please, my lords, turn aside to your servant's house. Spend the night, wash your feet, and rise early to continue your journey."
But they answered, "We will stay in the square tonight." Lot trembled. He knew what the square became after dark. With urgency, he pleaded until at last they consented. Bread was prepared, a meal was shared, and silence filled the house. But before the night was over, the city gathered. Footsteps echoed in the streets, then voices, then fists upon the door. From every quarter of Sodom, men surrounded the house.
"Where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us, that we may have our way with them."
The door shook beneath their fists. Their voices rose in the night, demanding that the strangers be brought out for their pleasure. What once hid in shadows was now shouted in the open. The corruption of Sodom stood naked at its own gate. Lot stepped out and closed the door behind him. His hands shook as he faced the crowd gathered at his house.
My brothers, I beg you, do not bring this evil on my home. These men are my guests, and they are under my protection.
The crowd roared with anger and laughter. Hands pushed Lot back. Voices shouted louder. "Stand aside," they cried. "This stranger dares to judge us. We will treat you worse than them." The mob surged. Lot was nearly dragged into their grip. Then the door burst open. The two visitors pulled Lot inside. Their strength was greater than men.
Enough. The measure of Sodom is full.
A sudden light burst from the doorway. The men outside stumbled, covering their eyes as blindness fell on them. But even blind, they did not stop. They stumbled in the street, stretching their hands for a door they could no longer find, driven by the same desire that ruled them before. Inside, the messenger spoke with urgency. "Do you have anyone else here? Sons, daughters, sons-in-law, anyone in this city who belongs to you? Gather them at once. The Lord has sent us to destroy this place. The outcry against it is unbearable, and judgment will not wait." Lot stood silent for a moment. The pounding outside faded into confused cries, but the weight of the words pressed heavier than the noise.
My family, I must warn them before it is too late.
Lot hurried into the night and found the men who were to marry his daughters.
Get up! Leave this place at once! The Lord will destroy this city.
But they laughed at him, thinking it was a joke. Lot turned back, heart heavy. Inside, the messengers warned, "Take your wife and your daughters who are here, or you will be swept away when the city is punished." But Lot lingered. The night passed in fear and hesitation. When morning came, the messengers took hold of Lot, his wife, and his daughters, and led them out of the house.
"Run for your lives. Don't look back. Don't stop in the plain. Escape to the mountains, or you will be destroyed."
Lot trembled. "Please, my lords, I cannot flee to the mountains. Disaster will overtake me. Let me escape to that small city nearby. Is it not little? Spare me there." The messengers looked upon him and answered,
"Very well. We grant you this request. Hurry to that place, for we can do nothing until you arrive."
So the city was called Zoar, the Little One. But Lot's wife turned her eyes back.
My heart is still in that city. I cannot let it go.
Defying the command, her heart clinging to Sodom, her body hardened, she became a pillar of salt on the road behind them. By the time Lot entered Zoar, the sun was already high above the plain. Behind him, the plain still stood, but its time had run out. Then the angels lifted their hands toward the sky. At the command of the Lord, fire fell from heaven.
A measure is complete. Now the fire of heaven will fall.
The heavens split and flames poured down like a storm. Burning sulfur rained upon Sodom and Gomorrah. Towers crumbled, roofs collapsed, and the streets turned to rivers of fire. What had been laughter in the night became screams in the morning. From Zoar, Lot and his daughters saw the plain consumed. A cloud of smoke rose like a furnace, covering the valley in darkness. The fire did not stop until nothing remained. The plain that once seemed like paradise became a wasteland of silence and smoke. Sodom and Gomorrah were no more. The fire died down, but the smoke did not. A black column rose from the plain, climbing into the sky like the smoke of a great furnace. far away, Abraham returned to the place where he had once stood before the Lord. From the ridge he looked east, and he saw the valley covered in ash and ruin.
If only tongue had been found. But there were not even tongue.
Yet even in judgment, mercy remained. Lot had been spared, pulled from the fire by the hand of heaven. Abraham bowed his head. The judge of all the earth had done what was right. But far below, in the shadow of the mountains, Lot's story was not yet finished. Lot was afraid to remain in Zoar. Though the city had been spared, his heart no longer trusted its walls. So he took his 2 daughters and fled to the mountains. There they found a cave and made it their home. But the shadow of Sodom had not left them. His daughters, seeing no future, whispered in fear that their family line would vanish. And so, in their despair, they made a plan.
There is no man left to give us children. Let us make our father drink wine, and through him we will preserve our seed.
So it was done. On 2 nights, Lot knew nothing of what took place, and from his daughters were born sons. The elder bore Moab, father of the Moabites. The younger bore Ben-Ammi, father of the Ammonites. Thus, even in survival, the wound of sin endured. Lot had been saved from the fire, but the legacy of Sodom lived on through his own house.
And so, the shadow of Sodom did not end in fire, but lingered through generations, a warning written in smoke and ash. If this story has spoken to you, we invite you to continue walking with us. Subscribe to Bible Stories Untold TV, share this film, and stay with our community as we uncover more mysteries of Scripture. Thank you for watching. May the lessons of Sodom and Gomorrah remain with you as a light and as a warning.